flag waves, and João Zarco leads the field out for this sighting lap. They'll do one lap to the grid, and then at 15 minutes past the hour, the Indonesian Grand Prix will be underway. World champion Fabio Quartararo starts from pole position. Just how much has his wet weather riding come on since last season? Of course, it was his difficulties in the wet conditions and mixed conditions that saw him start the Grand Prix that eventually concluded with him as world champion back at the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix last year from 15th on the grid. Can he put those problems behind him and give his World Championship defence the kickstart that it needs?
This is a massive step into the unknown for these MotoGP riders. They've done barely a handful of wet weather laps. Certainly the track wasn't as wet as this on Saturday morning. So this really is stepping into the unknown territory. Who's going to quickly master the conditions? Who's going to take the big risks? Jack Miller, well, you know that he's so good in the wet conditions. He's proven to be strong on the Ducati and the Honda in the past. Of course, it was mixed conditions, and he took that famous win at the Dutch TT in Assen back in 2016. Who else has got really strong wet weather prowess in this field? Frankie Morbidelli's actually not a bad wet weather rider. Other guys with nothing to lose, really. Andrea Dovizioso, particularly on a factory Ducati, where you could always put your money on him to be a big threat in these rain conditions. You've got to say, the way that Fabio Quartararo is throwing that Yamaha around that second sector, there's been a lot of feedback from the World Superbike riders here and the Moto3 riders who've had a couple of wet sessions that the grip levels here in the rain at this Mandalika circuit are very good. Very good indeed. So you can see the guys are just out there now trying to understand where the patches of water are, where the water's perhaps at its worst, and then also just work out the grip levels. Pecco Bagnaia, also relatively inexperienced in terms of wet weather riding in MotoGP as well.
Alex Rins is a rider I'd perhaps point to as well, who might have half a chance in these conditions. He starts in the middle of the third row in 8th place. Pit lane closes in 4 minutes time, which is why you're seeing riders come back down pit lane. They do have time to do this. This isn't like the quick restart procedure where you have 60 seconds to get out there before the pit lane closes again. So understandably, some of the smart cookies on this grid, the two Pramac riders, the two Suzuki riders, taking the opportunity to do an extra lap of the track before they pull up on the grid, just to get a little bit more information, just to see where some of the damper patches are, where some of the grip levels are.
Usually perform well in a wet condition, so yeah, finger crossed and let's go. Best of luck. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks to Francesco Guidotti. Great start, as Lewis said, for the KTM team in Doha. Brad Binder, his third podium finish in the Premier class. I wonder if he's going to be tempted to go out on slick tyres. Joking, of course. That was, of course, his brilliant victory at the Red Bull Ring in the Austrian Grand Prix last year. So finally, we are getting the grid forming here at the Pertamina Mandalika circuit in Indonesia. Pramac Ducati await their man, Jorge Martin and João Zarco, both going from the front row of the grid. Brad Binder. There's going to be some nerve jangling now because, as we mentioned, we can't overemphasise, this is a complete blank canvas, a complete journey into the unknown for these guys. They've never raced before here in Mandalika. They've certainly got very little experience of wet weather conditions. In some respects, it might be a bit of a lottery, but it's certainly going to provide some nail-biting entertainment. We hope you have stuck with us over the last hour and a half or so when our coverage for MotoGP started. I'm sure you have. Why would you go anywhere? It's the greatest motorsport show on earth as we look at Enea Bastianini starting from the middle of that second row. Binder and Bastianini, Lewis, in the dry, you really fancy them to be strong given they've excelled in the Doha from really good qualifying performances. Let's quickly pop down to the grid again. Piero Taramasso and Michelin, they've been thrown an 11th hour curveball, haven't they, by these tricky conditions? Simon's with the Michelin Motorsport manager, Piero Taramasso.
Yes, Piero, some new conditions for you to make the weekend even tougher. Can you tell us what tyres the riders will go for?
Yeah, in this condition, the choice is medium front and medium rear. This is the one because the track temperature is still quite high, is around 25, 26 degrees. And also because here, the tricky point is the overheating on the right side. With the soft compound, the problem that you might overheat too much, you lose grip. With the medium, will be much more stable. So this is the best choice for this condition.
Thank you, Piero.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thanks to Piero Taramasso. We're just running through this revised grid now, of course, revised sadly because 8 times world champion Marc Marquez has been ruled out of this delayed Indonesian Grand Prix. There is the president then, Mr. Joko Widodo, who is finally, after all of his effort and all the effort of the authorities here in Indonesia, it looks like, thankfully, we are going to get MotoGP action here in Indonesia for the first time since 1997.
Well, the Shaman certainly did the trick in the end. We got the race we were hoping for.
Yeah, whatever that lady's name was, get her inducted into the MotoGP Hall of Fame very, very quickly, because, yes, it does look like the Rain Banisher, or whatever she was called by the locals. She normally goes to big events like weddings and parties.
She'll be getting a position at the FIM, I think. She'll be taken to every Grand Prix over the course of the year now to try and ward off any potential wet races or cancellations. So we're about to get underway then for this Indonesian Grand Prix, and Aya Bastianini goes into it as the championship leader. Let's get a word from Grassini with Simon.
Yeah, that was a key word you said there, championship leader. That's why I've come to see Michele Massini. Michele, he's done so well in Nea, you know, for the first race all the way through this event, put himself in a good position on the grid, looked good in FP4. Now, completely different conditions. How does he feel about the wet?
Yeah, now it's difficult to predict how does it go the race, because still a lot of water on track. There is a big patch in some corner, but for sure this is the same condition for everybody, and we don't make any practice on this condition. So we will see. We start from the second row. This is good enough, but we have to learn lap by lap what we can do.
How does Enea feel about rain condition riding?
Not so bad. Not so bad. We have to improve in this point, but we have a good base on the rain.
Thank you and best of luck.
Thank you to you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Simon. Thanks to Michele Massini from the Grassini Ducati team. Can they continue their stellar start to 2022? Alex Rins, not quite sure that it's sunglasses weather right now for the Suzuki man, but I guess just trying to keep himself focused, trying to hide some of the nerves that will inevitably be hitting these riders. This is nerve-wracking stuff. This is tense. This is where these guys are really, their skills are put to the limit, their concentration, their focus, because they're just about to encounter a racetrack in conditions that they've never experienced before. It's a bit of a level playing field, this, isn't it? It's going to be a case of fortune favouring the brave. Jack Miller, normally he revels in these kind of conditions. Even Thriller Miller looks a little bit pensive as we count down towards race time here in Mandalika.
Yeah, just 6 minutes to go then. Speaking, of course, earlier on, we were discussing the potential strategies that might be deployed in a dry weather race, and the big talking point, I suppose, was Fabio Quartararo's determination, I think, to get to the front of the race and get a clear track, with the Ducatis looking to stop him doing so. In many ways, even though it's a wet race, that is still the aim for Fabio Quartararo, more because of the visibility here rather than any kind of issues with overheating front tyres. We're still expecting to see a little bit of spray, more than a little bit of spray. There will still be some standing water in patches of this racetrack. We've already heard from Piero Taramasso that there are still some patches as the virtual fan wall. Get ready to see this historic first Indonesian Grand Prix in 25 years. If we are going to see some spray, particularly in the early laps with the field all running together, it's going to be so important for these guys to try and get a clear track as soon as possible. Yeah, Fabio Quartararo would not have known how perhaps significant that pole position was yesterday. He knew it was going to be good and crucial in dry conditions. Well, it might be absolutely vital now with, as Lewis said, the potential for spray hitting the riders that are in the chasing pack. An excellent weekend so far then for this young man, Fabio Di Gianantonio. Very, very limited experience of that Ducati in rain conditions. This is going to be a tough test of the mettle for these MotoGP riders. 5 minutes then to the race start here in Mandalika, and finally we can say there's going to be MotoGP race action in Indonesia. Our first visit to Southeast Asia since 2019. One rider perhaps to identify that we haven't mentioned yet, who will certainly fancy his chances in these conditions. Starts all the way back in 18th on the grid. The brother of this man, Marc Marquez, if you're just joining us, will not start this Grand Prix due to a concussion sustained in the warm-up earlier on today, as some drizzle starts to fall as Simon Crafar lets us know from pit lane, but Alex Marquez, his brother, of course, took a sensational podium, his first podium in MotoGP in very wet conditions at Le Mans, and very nearly won that Grand Prix as he was chasing down Danilo Petrucci. He'll certainly be a rider who will have a big result on his hands potentially today, certainly a bigger result than he thought when he qualified 18th yesterday.
Let's just hope then that that rain that's just starting to fall a little bit heavier again as the team personnel are told to clear the grid, that it doesn't start falling as ferocious as what it did about an hour ago, which caused this lengthy delay here for the MotoGP return to Indonesia for the first time since 1997. Understandably,